What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and some new interesting news coming out of IGN, Naughty Dog, and The Last of Us 2 camp. An apology from IGN and some outing of some toxic coworkers, apparently. Hey, and before I get into the story, we're really close to 800,000 subscribers, and still nearly 40% of my viewers are not subscribed. I'm hoping that my variety of content, my consistent uploads, and my cheery demeanor will be enough today for me to earn your subscription. There's a button right below. Please consider clicking it, or on the main channel. It just helps finding my videos, makes finding my videos much easier. Now, I follow Neil on Twitter. I'm actually out to him on a question about something else that I'm waiting to cover. It may come out tonight. It may have to wait till tomorrow. I want to give him time to reply to it. He replies and says, "Wow, dude, not gonna lie. I was angry for a long time about this. I appreciate you putting the truth out there. Please know I don't hold a grudge and wish you the best. Sorry for what you went through." And ultimately, most of these replies are supportive. And look, Neil, I may not love his game, but he seems like a nice guy. He went out of his way to give a kind remark to me when he saw the video of my dog passing. And so I'm not going to take any. That's why I haven't given Neil any personal kind of jabs lately. I'm better than that, and he kind of proved that. What's interesting is this tweet is from somebody that blocked me. So I have no idea who they are. Well, now, writer, Star Wars Squadron Battlefront 2 at Motive Montreal, permanently banned Dota 2 player, your friendo, and pronouns. So, IGN exposed. Solidarity with my IGN coworkers who endured emotional bad behavior from Tal Blevins and Steve Butts in my time from 2012 to 2016. So 4 years ago, minimum 8 max. I felt taken advantage of, exploited, and manipulated, and was afraid for my job at nearly every turn, and was one of the, quote, lucky ones working for them. When Tal wanted something done, or he didn't agree with something I said, which happened often, as IGN employees were mostly amazing people, pushing them to do better, he would require CC Steve to intimidate me into following through with his request. These guys stayed at $3,000 Airbnbs while employees shared rooms in roach hotels. We were pushed to have our own rooms, which I'm pretty sure they legally had to oblige. They told us, when we pushed out our room, they told us to deal with it because the company didn't have the money. BS. Actually, huge corporation, client of mine, still requires people, or up until recently, requires their employees to share hotel rooms, which is insane. But nonetheless, I digress. In 2014, I was halfway through my work permit timeline, and I opened conversations with Steve about renewing for 2016. For 2 years, I was uncertain if I would have a job or be allowed to stay in the country because I never got a positive answer. Steve Butts and Tal Blevins reprimanded staff for standing up for friends. They created a culture of fear among the best people I've ever known. We only have had each other. None of us knew what to do to feel better about facing these guys every day. Well, you should quit and move on. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I get cancel culture, why people do it, because they feel powerless, and this gives them a moment of power. But, you know, you're going to have a lot of crummy bosses. If I could talk to my viewers, you're going to have a lot of crummy bosses in your life. And rather than whine about it on Twitter, I recommend just finding a different job. But nonetheless, when I reported Amy leaving Naughty Dog, Steve and Tal forced gossip into the story. They heard it was a hostile takeover. We didn't want to publish it. I tried to take my name off the story. They would not allow me to do so. They forced an unproven claim onto IGN.com with my story on it, against my will, to protect their, quote, relationship with Sony. When Sony justifiably condemned our story, Steve and Tal were silent. They never went to bat for me for a second. To Neil Druckmann and Bruce Staley, who were caught in the crossfire of IGN's hostile, toxic leadership. I'm sorry. I'm responsible for the anger, disgust, and disappointment you've lived with since then, and I'll never forgive myself for buckling beneath these manipulative monsters. Spicy. And, you know, an apology, I think, when genuine, this clearly seems genuine, you should accept an apology. I don't think anyone wins by not accepting apologies. We see this on Twitter all the time when people demand an apology and then it's never enough. These guys would later publish a story on IGN.com stating The Last Guardian was canceled. When confronted about publishing an unsubstantiated, hilariously baloney story without consulting the news team, they said, "You should have chased this." When I pushed for a promotion, I was told to not until you say yes more. They wanted someone to agree with their wretched decision-making and horrible leadership practices. I got a cost of living raise every year and nothing more. Nothing was ever enough to earn you anything. Steve and Tal are responsible for creating unsafe and toxic work environment that torpedoed my mental health, and it was much worse for many more. I hope these two never have a voice in games again, never hire their consultancy firm. It's called Level 74. At least he named names. I've been reading a lot of these stories about, game developers. There's one going on right now. About a particular developer who I won't name here. I'm waiting for them to name names because I'm not going to just publish a story with no names attached to it if I can avoid it. You want to have somebody to be held responsible. The end, I'm over it. Oh, I'm sorry. The end, I'm over this, but I think about it a lot. Many years later, I think about my friends who experienced worse and what I should have done to help them career be damned. Listen to the stories you're hearing. Ejecting poop heads is the only way we fix this. Let me actually end on IGN effing rules. I adore those people, and that place and my friends were so much happier now than they were when I was there. Progress has been made as they've rooted out the rot inside. Change is possible. Never let them win. Well, interesting that you added that on to cover for IGN. You know, I think that you have a lot of people, in here saying, now do Naughty Dog's employees. Because, Naughty Dog's employees were put under a significant amount of crunch, and that's obviously a topic that was floating around but quickly forgotten by the leaks. I mean, it's almost like the leaks were, planned. But here we go. Kelly Plague, someone, I think she's at GameSpot now. Yeah, she's a reviews editor. IGN is canceled. You see here Jason Schreier changing it. This is nowhere near as bad as other stories, but I often think of my time that I applied at IGN in 2011. They offered an interview, but when I scrolled through the replies and saw the internal dialogue between HR, we're not going to hire her, but this is good training. Ew, yikes. That does suck, but that does also happen. Here's Kelly Plague's story. Remember, she was the one that infamously questioned why all the zombies in Days Gone were white, even though it was a part of the narrative. And also, I think she's behind the 8 out of 10 too much water in Pokemon Water game. So she says, I wasn't going to say anything because I'm afraid, but F it. It took me years to recover from the bad behavior I endured at IGN. I've posted about just one incident, but working under Steve and Tal was an unparalleled experience in being bullied and belittled. Tal was my boss for a while and was horrible to me. He'd yell at me for being away from my desk for any reason. One day I broke down crying at my desk because I could never take a lunch break. And Sam, who is lovely, told me I could get lunch and it would be okay. I came back after half an hour to 3 emails from Tal demanding to know where I was and why I'd left my desk. At lunchtime, my friends had to start getting me lunch because I couldn't leave. That's crazy. When Tal was let go, I was ecstatic. Again, if true. I thought my life would finally get better, but then Steve was my boss, and it was even worse. Steve regularly humiliated people like me and Chloe and Eric in front of others. He'd try to make me gather everyone for a morning stand-up because he knew it made me anxious. He'd swear at me when something was wrong. Steve told me that if I really wanted to be an editor one day, that I'd have to do a lot more editorial work to prove myself. Okay. I work constantly doing editorial work at home and my promotions job during the day. When I reported the person who was bad to me to HR, Steve threatened me. He told me he just wanted to all be over and that I should talk it out with him. He would bring me into rooms to intimidate me. I continued doing editorial work. I did an editor's worth of reviews in 2016. I did Anime Club. I worked and worked and worked, and Steve continued to taunt and bully and yell at me, and then offer hugs and apologize later, of course. When I got the offer from GameSpot, I asked Steve if I had ever had any hope of being an editor at all with all the work I'd done. He said, never. Became an editor and never became an editor at IGN, and now I'm the reviews editor at GameSpot. Good. So, you know, if your job is awful, you should quit. These companies are at-will employees. I had a lot of panic attacks the years after I quit, a lot more issues believing I was worthy of my job and my colleagues actually liked me. It's a lot better now, but forget Tall and Steve, one of the reaction... Oh, I'm sorry. And F that one reaction guy you all love so much. I don't know who that reaction guy is. Interestingly, who that is. Serious question. What is reaction guy? I know it's not the main point, but I'm just trying to understand. Someone I'm afraid to call out directly. I know you mean well, but naming the people that do that could prevent them from hurting other people. Interesting. The reaction guy, maybe at IGN? Probably Pierre Schneider. Maybe, man, I really thought he was one of the good guys. Pierre Schneider's the only guy I can think of with an immense amount of power, while also being related to reaction guy. Interesting. Well, she should probably call out that person nonetheless. Sounds like working in the games industry is awful. Now, I've been on record before that I think most of these people that work in these industry are 10-ply soft. But that doesn't mean what they say isn't true. And it looks like the dream of working at IGN was a nightmare. And I guess apparently Naughty Dog and the Last of Us team finally got their apology. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.